It's not a funny one, so oh well.
Okay, got it. So everybody can read what number they are, so they know what number they're going to be at.
Okay.
They're number 7, Mark.
Okay. Oh, I see. Yeah, I got you there. Yeah, very
Peter's
good.
now number 12.
Oh, number 12.
There's number 3rd. We switched him and somebody else around.
Hey, Specs, I like the wall color you got behind you there. It's similar to, what I got back here. Nicely coordinated.
Oh,
It's similar to too many of my sweaters, so I have to.
You blend in with the burgundy.
you would blend right in, Peter. To be able to see ya. It's a good thing you have another color in your wardrobe.
I only brought 2, so this is it. This is number 2.
It sets you off nicely.
Thank you.
Yeah, very well.
Very nice color. And then we got the 2 libraries, David's library and Jennifer's lovely library. And then I just have a TV and a flower thing behind me. Not very colorful, not very, well, maybe the flowers are colorful, I guess. So what's new, David and Kathleen?
Is there anything new, David?
No, only in our minds and our souls. Gibsons is pretty damp and grey.
I think I'm going to need to make a trip over to Gibsons. I think I'm just going to zip over to Gibsons one day.
Yes, that would be great.
That's quite a skip.
We would show you.
That's true. It is quite a skip, but hey.
2 ferries.
Yes, I know it's 2 ferries. I have been over there. I was there in 1999.
That's before our time.
Before you were even there?
We
Were you not there in
but we were there, but we weren't knowing Karl. That's what.
But that's right, together in the sense of Karl, yes.
Yes.
But I hope we were together,
as the 2 of us, but not with Karl.
Not with Karl.
Yeah, I was there in I think it was July for about, I think a week.
Yeah, it's a good time.
They still talk about it.
I was there for a scout jamboree.
Over.
There was a scout jamboree over there at Camp Bing.
Oh, of course.
And that's where I stayed. So I was staying at Camp Bing.
Yeah.
And they've closed camping now.
Yeah, I think, there's a rumor.
Oh, they closed it down?
Well, no, I don't think so. They talked about it. There's a rumor that they were going to sell it, but they said
That's
no.
interesting that they closed it down.
No, I don't think they closed it down.
There's the debates.
Well, I don't know. Well, Scouts Canada owns it, so maybe they don't use it anymore.
Yeah, I think they're
Because
complaining.
there's only 2 places to go camping, and it's either the Salvation Army camp,
Yeah.
or Camp Bing. So
Yeah.
I was camping in Gibson. Someone says you can't camp there. There's no campground. I'm like, well, I was camping.
Yeah.
The Boys and Girls Club, is it called? Vancouver
That's
has
the
a site.
Salvation Army one.
Is it the same?
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah.
But the one by the ferry is Salvation Army.
Yeah.
But the Boys and Girls one's up at Langdale Heights.
Yeah, that's too bad. There's no campground over there because that would be a beautiful place to camp. Well, maybe I'll find some money and open up because I love camping.
Well, it's a provincial
It's a very
camp,
beautiful
huh?
place.
Yes, there is. Roberts Creek was one, isn't there?
Yeah, provincial. Porpoise Bay.
Yeah, I was hiking. I think my job was hiking. I think I did some hiking.
Well,
I can't remember. It was so long ago. I can't remember.
oh, yeah, I realize. It's a long time ago.
1999 was a long, long time
Oh,
ago.
no.
No, not really, no.
Well, for me, it feels like a long time ago.
Well, it would for you, Karl, yes, but, when you get far enough, 25 years is, a couple of weeks back.
Very good. Jennifer's right.
I don't know.
Eventually, your whole life is like a couple of seconds.
Yeah.
Well, can I blame it on old age now? I am a quarter of a century, so I can blame it on that, can't I?
Oh, you're a youngster, Karl.
Oh, I don't know. 50 doesn't feel so young.
Well, you know, that's a significant number. True.
Just 1 second. We're doing a sound check here in Char's.
What does she want me to do?
Just talk in the into the mic there, Karen. Say, yeah, just give it a check.
Okay, this is just a check. Is that okay?
Not very loud. Is the mic on?
Is it better for me to hold the mic?
Was the button for it again?
Check, check, check.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so bring it down a bit.
Bring the center of it.
Okay, that's better.
Yeah.
So, but I'm worried about looking down.
Yeah, try to lower it. If you want to look down, you can angle it. Is that good?
Can you hear me now?
You gotta talk right in the center. That's why I had it angled up, right?
Okay, angle it up. How's that? I'm looking down.
Right after, just talk a bit louder on.
I'll hold it up this way.
Hold it, yep.
Okay, how do you do that?
Microphone discussion.
Yes. See, I'm a bit confused about what has caused us to get down there.
Turn it on.
You mean you want to see all of them?
No, I don't.
Can't. How's that? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Is that better?
Yes.
Talk loud. Okay. But go at it. Okay, hello, Port Alberni. We're going to start in 5 minutes. Hey, I can put it down there.
5 minutes.
Is everybody,
Everybody here, Judith? I mean, Karen? Why I say Judith? Sorry.
okay, try it again there, Karen.
Hello, Port Alberni. Not yet?
No, not out in the Zoom world.
Okay.
No, it's good in Zoom.
That
but
okay?
Not good in the real
It's
world.
it sounds lovely out here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's
Well,
why
I can
we
hear.
want-
I can hear Char, but I can't hear the microphone. I don't think, or maybe I did. I don't know.
Sorry, Mark. Did you say you couldn't hear it?
Well, I could hear Char, but I wasn't sure I could hear the microphone.
Try that mic again, Char. No. Okay. Yeah, give it a test there, Kyle. No.
Turn off there? Oh, it got turned off.
Yeah, now I can hear.
Test, mic test. Can you hear me?
Now it's good.
Good?
Now it's good.
All right.
Okay. Awesome. There we go.
Okay, it's 6 o'clock, and I want to welcome everyone to Char's Landing. We've got a big crowd here. Welcome, everybody. Yay, give us a yay. All right. And then I want to say welcome to our Zoomers out in the world. Welcome, Zoomers. Yay. Oh, there's no cheer. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So thank you all. Happy 2024. Let's do more in 2024. Right?
Oh,
Yes.
And we've got more here, so that's fantastic.
And there's
So I'm going to
some
turn it over to Karl and Derek, and Karl's got his script, does he?
yes,
Ready to go? And I turned on the recording. I think we got it all.
Yeah, we're
So
recording.
have a great night, everybody.
Alleged Mermaid Emcee Derek Hanebury is a Port Alberni writer of poetry, fiction, and creative nonfiction who taught writing here at North Island College for many years. His new book, Something Else, is already out. Else Altogether is out.
Thank you, Karl, and good evening and welcome everyone. Great to be back here, and I hope this is a good sign for the new year that we've got a healthy crowd here in person and a healthy crowd out there in Zoom land. And together we're going to have a great year. I got a good feeling about it. Nice to see some new faces here at Char's, and I'll give you the ground rules. You're allowed to heckle, but you can't throw things. That's the bottom line. No, we're yeah. Yeah. So yeah, we run a hybrid program here. So we have people out in the Zoom land all over the country, and I don't see our friend from Germany here tonight, but Ontario and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 5 that I can see on my screen. I don't know. You see more, Karl? Yeah, yeah. And sometimes that swells, and yeah, it fluctuates. It's great. Anyway, we're coming to you from beautiful downtown Port Alberni on the unceded territory of the Hepetcheseth and Sishat First Nations. Grateful to them and their ancestors for sharing their land with us and letting us be here tonight to share our literary works together and inspire each other to keep writing and keep reading and keep elevating the quality of the work that we do, and support each other as writers, because it's often a lonely occupation or hobby that we've chosen, and it's nice to be able to get together with like-minded folks and see reactions in person. You know, when you read something and feel that back from the audience, it's a wonderful thing. So great to see everybody here, and we've got a full slate of readers tonight. So it's going to be a couple hours at least, so we can just sit down and relax, pour ourselves a cup of tea, and enjoy ourselves. Our featured reader tonight is coming to you live from Port Alberni, Karen Poirier. She's here going to read from her novel. So yay, Karen! And yeah, so we're going to get started right away here. We're going to start in person here live at Char's with Judith Reeves. Judith is going to read. Thank you, Judith. Come on up. And Kyle's going to adjust that mic for her, so it's just perfect.
So just quickly, I'll start with just describing myself. I have Inuit ancestry, and I live on the East Coast as well as the West Coast. I live in Newfoundland, and so
You'll have to stay closer to the mic there.
Some of my poetry, will be related to that, related to my time on the ocean when I was a fisheries observer and a fisheries biologist. So anyway, that just gives you a little background, right?
Thank you.
This first poem is called Hubbard. When Hubbard opened his mouth, the last Inuit word fell out. Soon after, other words flowing over his tongue also spilled out and were lost. Hubbard didn't notice, living inside his own thoughts as he had for years. His language had been learned in the cradle. It had been on its own for a long time. Ever since all the others had died, the words lived only in the old world. The old world where fish jumped in the river, the raccoon, fox, and wolf prowled in the forests. Those words that Hubbard had spoken all his life now lived only in Hubbard's memory. The years had passed and Hubbard had not spoken them aloud to anyone. All those many years ago, when he had been young, there had been plenty of reasons to talk, sitting in the bush house, surrounded by family, teaching his children the ways of the people, hunting and fishing, the animals of the land, named by the people of the land. And the land itself moved in the people and nurtured the people and fed and clothed and sheltered the people. But those reasons were gone, dead and gone. His own family had been stolen from him. His language had been stolen. His way of life had been stolen. His children had been taken and taught the English way, to speak and to move and to eat and to think. taught their native language was an insult, that the English God did not approve, that the English God did not like the ways of the people who had survived on this land that the Creator had made for them and the animals of the land. And Hubbard was made to let his children go to the English school. He remembered sadly that he had to leave his home to be close to them in the English town, but he had not thought about the other consequences. And now, alone in his own world, his own language would die with him, the last speaker in the last interview. As he speaks his dialect of Inuktitut into the microphone, his flowing voice rises and falls like a river. Hubbard cannot tell his own children about that river. He cannot tell them how the land moves in the winter, how the water falls from the paddle, how the eagle watches. His words break my heart in their loveliness. His voice rolls and melts the snow.
Beautiful.
It was obvious the fish were dying. Sorry, I'm going to start again. It's called Fish Requiem. It was obvious the fish was dying. He thwacked his caudal fin limply, side to side to side, nosing out into the current repeatedly, desperate to dive into the river. Lacking in strength, he floated again and again back to the surface, nosing in towards the shore. He lay his head on the shore, one beady eye watching me. It was a magnificent, crisp winter day on the river. The sun lay in smoky streams through the upper crust. The air felt clean and bright on my cheek. Insects and fine dust settled on the surface. A few dead heads floated by. But for the fish, it was the end. His skin was dull and tattered. Bits of flesh hung from his tired back from years of peril at sea. He was a large salmon, and it was the end of a large life. I followed him on his journey up and down the shore, watching all the while his vain attempts to submerge in the river. He never made it. He was done for. The eagles that lined this river were waiting for him. For countless years, they had floated high above his world, waiting with sharp eyes, the flick of a tired tail, the last roll, the last gasp of a ragged gill. I strolled back to my car, lost in a small death. That's the Fraser River mission. So I spent almost 12 years at sea on the Atlantic. This one's called Winter Ice. The ice flowed over the rail in a river, molded and smoky, transparent like a gypsy's looking glass, a fog on someone's heart. We were steaming north, and the January wind had whipped up the ocean good. A winter gale threw up a spray that froze as it landed, 100 miles offshore, Labrador. Our dragger was a place to land. The starboard side was listing heavily. The ice had coated the rigging completely. The bolts and uneven welds were covered in a thick, ropey cast. On the roof of the bridge, the ice flowed in a great milky sheet. The decks were treacherous. Surplus trawls lay heaped in frozen moguls, and in the stern, the ramp was a skating rink. The crew and I clung on to whatever as the mutinous ice gathered. The weather beat steady, tilting the old dragger in a dangerous slide. The captain, who had been concentrated till now, exchanged looks with the first mate. And sure enough, the first watch began to appear on the forward deck, orange and black oilskins in various states of bad repair, strapped them into their warm and smelly lumberjack shirts. Around their waists, belts and ropes attached them to the deck. In their mitted hands, huge mallets swung over their heads, pounding the bitter ice. Shards flew in all directions.
Sorry to interrupt, but it's 6 minutes now. We usually go about 5 minutes. So if you
Okay,
can just finish that one up quick.
I will.
All right.
That was the last one.
Perfect. Thank you.
Shards flew in all directions with great blows. The men slipped and wrenched around on the glare ice, trying not to miss, trying not to fall. An hour later, and with only slightly less list, the first lot were replaced. Their haggard faces said it all, beat and frozen themselves as they rattled down the gangway. Cookie was ready with some baking and tea. Heading down for a mug up, I joined them in the galley, feeling guilty for staying on the bridge while they put their lives on the line. Bloody North Atlantic, bloody fishing, damn that winter ice. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Thank you, Judith. That was lovely. And very evocative of those landscapes of the east there and the west, I guess, with the Fraser. But my relatives are all hail from Newfoundland, and remember that book that was written about the sealers that died out on the ice, and I've forgotten the name of it, but that book was very powerful. And your writing reminded me of that, just in how well it evokes those images of the land and the sea there, and the treachery of that climate. Oh my God. Well, thank you for doing that. Beautiful, Judith. Thank you. All right. All right, and we're going to go to Ontario now, out in Zoomland, and Jennifer's going to share some of her beautiful poetry with us again tonight, I'm hoping. How are you, Jennifer?
Not too bad. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Holocaust Remembrance Day was 4 days ago on the 27th. And so with that in mind, I'm going to do one piece from the Auschwitz Threnody Cycle, which is in my Hear Through the Silence book. Now, when you go there is a museum that's it's sort of one of the first things that you typically see. And one of the parts of that has a whole bunch of pictures on a series of different walls. And the reason for the pictures is because the Nazis, there was a small minority of people that were put into slavery as opposed to being killed right away. And they took mug shots, if you like, of them. And so a whole whack of those were preserved. And so they have, them blown up and in frames on the wall and some information on it. So this section called Faces and Fates is a reaction to that. Pictures on a wall, faces and fates. Oh, and I'm going to stop and say the trigger warning, this is a difficult subject. Pictures on a wall, faces and fates of an infinitesimal fraction, frozen flashes of shock, confusion, resignation, emptiness, burning anger, death sentences delayed for a bit in lieu of toiling thraldom, scanning the array, witnessing lives stripped down to a few words. What happened becomes my mantra while I silently honor each tragic pleading image as I search. Stanislav G., 30, here nearly 15 months. Victim, maybe, of one of the legion of typhus-bearing lice. Time ended in fever and delirium. Mieczyslav I., 23, when you arrived in January 1941. Passing in April 1942, perhaps by then a wasted, withered wraith. Yosef, 45, 15-month term ended in June 1942. I wonder if the finale was shrouded in dysenteric abdominal agony and diarrhea. Zygmunt, 42, 4 months in, you may have looked the wrong way at a guard and been beaten to death for such egregious effrontery. Mieczyslav A., 30, that fatal November day chills my bones over time and distance. It may have found you racked with painful coughing and gasping for breath as pneumonia finished you off. Stanislav Z., nearly 47, after 7 months here, perhaps you took matters into your own hands and threw yourself onto the electrified fence. And on the anguished visions, into the youth room, still searching. Moses, 16, enslaved just a month, early 1942, a February-induced case of frostbite leading to gangrene, spreading its deadly tentacles. Casimir, just 14, no death date, just did not survive. Very early on, you may have collapsed at one of the interminable roll calls and quickly been consigned to the flames. Annika, also just 14, arrived July 1942, fate unknown. What happened? Maybe you made it all the way to New Year's 1945, only to crumple on an aptly named death march out of here and been casually chucked into a ditch. And on, students, artisans, farmers, academics, each pair of haunted eyes proclaiming, I too had a story, worked hard, strove to find my place. I too had a story, one replete with love and loss, frustrations and triumphs large and small. I too had a story, defied them while strength remained. I too had a story of hopes and dreams. But finally there, just one, high up in a corner, Janina Bleiberg, 16, unflinching gaze boring through the photographer to a point far beyond, tagged Yuda, Jew, surety here against anything resembling decent treatment, cast without Daniel into a lion's den where women suffered more, where some turned on their own to escape the snapping jaws a little longer. Did you have some prized skill, maybe musical for the camp orchestra, which serenaded starving work details, or perhaps languages so orders from the overlords were unambiguous, but maybe an extraordinary synthesis of stamina, courage, wits, and luck stood alone. Janina Bleiberg, 16, arrived May 30th, 1942, well over 2.5 years chained up in the Dragon's Cave, over 32 months lashed to 4 rampaging apocalyptic horsemen, the culmination embodied on the label in one blazing triumphant word, survived. A chorus of silenced voices flows from all the other frames. We too had stories of hopes and dreams and tragedy. We too passed through here, but were trampled by those lethal riders. You who survived, you who come after, bear witness. Thank you.
Beautiful. And thank you for bearing witness. That was powerful. Thank you. All right, and a good setup, Jennifer, for our featured reader tonight, because Karen Poirier is going to read to us from her novel that's about her father and his internment in a prisoner of war camp during the Second World War. So let's say thank you, Jennifer, and let's have a warm round of applause welcoming Karen Poirier, our featured reader, up tonight. And for those of you who don't know Karen, she's a gifted visual artist as well as a gifted writer, and she's been active in the arts community here in Port Alberni for a long time. So we're really, really glad that she stepped into the featured spot tonight to share with us from her book.
Hey, can you hear it? Can you hear me? Okay, good evening.
Yeah.
I've got two pieces to share from the book. Following the battle, Lloyd and fellow prisoners were marched from Pourville to Dieppe, and it was after the battle, and it was quite an emotional time for them. Lloyd's boots crunched the gravel. He was alive, but still in shock, his mind refusing to focus on anything but his steps forward and his trembling breath. He was aware of the men marching in front of him. Their quiet despair hung like a sorrowful shroud in air heavy with tension, dirty sweat, and disappointment. He walked in a long column of prisoners, ignoring the vague pain shooting up from his right leg. His shoulders ached, gripped by fatigue, and he wished he could drop his hands held up behind his head. The line of prisoners grew longer as they marched along the roadway from Pourville to Dieppe. Heartbroken, they were still united, bound by a collective melancholy. Their ordeal was written on their blackened faces, their torn and dirty uniforms, and their tired, humble steps. This wasn't the quick victory they'd hoped for. The soldier in front of him teetered and hesitated as his bare feet settled on small rocks lining the roadway. From behind him, Lloyd slowed his pace, and his arm dropped to offer support. "Mars!" yelled a German guard, and both Lloyd and his fellow prisoners straightened and continued in step with the long line of captives. As he marched forward, Lloyd noticed a white sheet of paper, trampled on and muddy, on the side of the road. He recognized it as one of the many flyers dropped by British airmen early this morning informing the French population of the attempt to liberate them. What good did it all do, he thought. What did we gain by it? "Halton?" Lloyd nearly tripped into the soldier in front of him when he stopped walking, then looked up. Another group of battered and captured soldiers were sitting on the side of the road. They were told to stand, and the guard motioned to them to file up beside Lloyd's column. "Hands runter?" The prisoners that understood German lowered their arms and Lloyd followed their lead. The prisoner next to Lloyd limped badly. Lloyd offered his arm, and the prisoner gratefully put his own arm around Lloyd's neck for support. Some of the men had bandages around their heads. Their helmets hung on their backs by the chin straps that settled around their necks. One man had a bandage completely around his eyes and needed the guidance of another prisoner to show him the way. Lloyd searched the faces of the prisoners, looking for someone familiar to him. There must be some survivors, some Camerons. Maybe further on, he thought. A German guard paced back and forth with crisp steps beside the long line of prisoners. He brushed up against Lloyd's uniform, and Lloyd felt the guard's gun bump against him and smelled his foul breath heavy with garlic. He heard the guard suck up and spit a gob. Lloyd looked down to see the spittle settle and slide down a rock by his feet. The guard looked unruffled in his gray-green uniform. He was wearing a leather shoulder strap, and attached to his waist was a leather gun case holding his revolver. The red swastika on the front of his helmet caught Lloyd's attention when the guard looked straight at him. Noticing the look of recognition reflected in Lloyd's eyes, the guard stopped and poked at Lloyd's bare and bandaged leg with his gun. Through a greasy grin and tobacco-stained teeth, the guard said in English, "Did you think we didn't know you were coming?" Lloyd didn't answer him. Instead, he looked away. "Mars?" The sad line of prisoners began walking again. Lloyd took sideways glances at the countryside around them. Pourville, a quiet resort village, lay straddling the beach, and behind them green fields shone like velvet in the sunshine, dotted with bales of hay and intermittent trees. The occasional villager appeared, nonchalant and seeming unperturbed, continued on with his daily tasks. It occurred to Lloyd that it was strange that nothing had changed. Their struggle hadn't altered a single thing. He wasn't sure what he expected, but the sun was shining on rooftops. People were going about their business. The sky, once cracked and glazed with smoke and a distant red, had cleared, and the German army was still in control. They walked 2 miles through the countryside to Dieppe. The bells sounded louder and clearer as they neared the town. Lloyd glanced at the bandage on his leg. He began to notice the pain was shooting up and through him with every step he took, jarring his memory of the battle. Why is my pant leg missing? Lloyd continued walking, the weight of a lifetime on his tired shoulders. The tall houses of Dieppe that seemed to carelessly blend into the sea rose up in the distance. Lloyd knew they weren't too far away, And as they approached the outskirts of the town, church bells continued to sound. The smoke was beginning to clear, and the smell of gunpowder was swept out to the channel by a cooling sea breeze. When they arrived at the outskirts of Dieppe, Lloyd looked up, then quickly looked away and shut his eyes. When he finally looked again, he saw bodies lined up like cordwood alongside the road against a wire fence, one corpse almost on top of the other. German soldiers were carrying makeshift stretchers made out of doors and pieces of plywood, with dead soldiers heaped on them. The reality of war rained down, pressed in on his insides, and forced back emotional tears stinging at the corners of his eyes. These were his comrades, the young men who would never return home. They marched through the main street of the town, a sleepy fishing village. Time-worn houses lined the cobblestone streets with outdoor stairways, potted plants, and pale-complexioned exteriors. Cawing seagulls blending with church bells grew louder, marking their way while French citizens with plastic faces walked quickly to work and to the shops. The fragrance of fresh coffee, freshly baked bread, and salty air filled Lloyd's senses. His mouth was so dry it felt swollen, and he wondered if he could even speak. He was aware of an intense thirst and an accompanying lightheadedness, and thought about how much he would love even a sip of coffee. The aroma almost drove him mad in his need for water. In a small sidewalk cafe, a group of Frenchmen sitting at a small round metal table stared at the captive soldiers as they walked by them. Lloyd saw they were very thin and looked to be what was left of an older population, the younger ones either in prison or fighting for the resistance. One man wearing a cap and a patched wool jacket gave Lloyd a quiet nod as he passed, and another man, frail and elderly, lifted a glass of wine in a subtle salute. At the end of the street, a gray stone church stood, its steeple reaching high towards the heavens, and its bell tolling its remembrance of a bloody sacrifice. The red wooden door opened up, and wedding guests spilled into the street, followed by the bride and groom. They hesitated upon seeing the ragged group of prisoners. The groom, holding the bride's hand under a shower of rice, continued walking towards the long file of Canadian prisoners. When they met, the bride and groom showed no emotion, youth erased from their faces. The groom, small in stature, wore a tired-looking suit, and the petite bride wore a short, simply styled dress. She carried a bouquet of daisies in her free hand, and her dark hair was pinned back with two of the flowers. When the bride and groom passed the barefooted soldier in front of Lloyd, the groom stopped. Without saying a word, he bent over, untied his shoes, and handed them to the soldier with bare feet. At that moment, Lloyd knew. He knew their sacrifice mattered, and in spite of the terrible defeat they suffered, the Canadians would not be forgotten. The tolling bells followed them all the way to the train station, telling a story the local people were too frightened to tell. They told for the dead, and they told for the wounded. They resounded over the hills, the fields, the rocky beaches, and the sea, and they told for the heartbreak the defeated army felt. So the second excerpt, it's a part of a chapter about the solitary confinement. Lloyd got caught trying to dig his way out of their camp. The first camp that they were in was Stalag 8B near Lambsdorff in Poland, and it was made famous by the movie The Great Escape. Apparently, most of the prisoners, that was their nightly activity, was digging. Lloyd slunk back down against the wall and looked up at the ceiling. Thin drops of water gathered and formed larger drops. Dripping rain fell to the floor of his cell, and more drops of water landed on his hair and ran down the back of his neck. He imagined himself disappearing, his energy, his flesh and bones evaporating into the clammy concrete floor. The whistle sounded again, louder as it approached. He stared at a drop of water, and in it he could see a memory reaching out from a lifetime ago. He thought the images had to belong to someone else, and yet he knew they were his. He was riding the rails again, free as a bird, looking for work, and sharing stories with the hobos who accompanied him. Lloyd smiled when he thought of them. I wonder where they are now. Hope they're doing better than me. Olivine, she's the best part of my world. He remembered her voice, her tenderness, and the loving look in her eyes when they were together. Well, I'm still breathing, and maybe we'll be together, and my world will be good again someday. Standing on his toes with his nose pressed against the concrete windowsill, Lloyd took another look out of the open window of his cell at the ground around the garbage can. He smelled wet tobacco and saw the remains of cigarette butts with melting paper stuck to them. I could sure use a smoke about now, he thought. The craving was real and powerful. His muscles twitched. The nicotine odor in his sweat oozed as his body withdrew from smoking cigarettes. When the guard came around with food and water, Lloyd rushed to the door and through the tiny opening spoke to him. Hey, you got a cigarette? There was no answer. Come on, man, I just need a puff. You know, one cigarette to tide me over. I'm going crazy in here. The stone-faced guard turned and walked away. Lloyd yelled after him, God damn it, I need a smoke. Why can't I have a smoke? Hey, Fritz, I know it's you. Bring me a smoke. The following day, when his meal arrived, there was one cigarette and one match placed under the black bread he'd been issued. Nothing was said between Lloyd and the guard. In the gloomy afternoon light, flies buzzed around Lloyd's head. They were big, black, fuzzy, annoying flies. They circled and landed first on one spot on his arm, then on another. Their fat, iridescent bellies and shiny eyes intrigued him. I didn't know they were different colors, he thought. For a moment he squinted to examine them. What makes them so persistent? Lloyd flicked them away and tried to think about something else, but they kept coming back. Oh, I'd like to smack those black buggers. He swatted at the air but missed his target by a mile, only to have two of them land on him again. I'm not your dinner, Lloyd shouted. He relaxed. You never give up, do you? Think you're quicker than me? His eyes followed the two flies as they circled again, landed on the mattress, and following each other took flight again. Once again, the first one, followed by the other, landed on Lloyd's arm, his face, then back to the mattress. Think you're smart, do you? I can catch you. Just watch me. Lloyd's eyes followed the flies, tried to snatch them out of the air and swatted at them once they landed. The flies still circled around his head. Lloyd spent the best part of the afternoon trying to catch the flies, but they prevailed until the next day when the dueling resumed. So you think you got me, eh? Well, I'm not finished with you yet, Lloyd muttered. He sat down on the floor of his cell, and his eyes followed the two flies circling in indistinct light from the small window. Hey, Fred, you got a girlfriend? Lloyd said to the fly. Freddie, that's a good name. Lloyd shook his head and chuckled to himself. Yeah, that's a good one. Freddie the fly. A smile slowly spread across his face. Ha, Flying Fred. I got a girlfriend, but I never see her. Haven't seen her in a long time. I might never see her again. Hey, you be nice to your girlfriend. You never know. That's right, Fred. You just never know. I had it made. Thought I'd see what the war was all about. What a dumb sucker I was. Hey, Fred, what's your buddy's name? The two flies continued their whirling dance in the air. Hey there, why don't you two go outside? Your friends are out there. They're having a swell time in the garbage pile. Lloyd watched as Freddie landed on the mattress and nonchalantly rubbed his spindly front legs together. For the best part of the day, Lloyd worked at catching them without success until he decided to slow down, watch them very carefully, and study how they moved. While Lloyd's eyes followed them, the two flies took off into the air, over and over again. How do they do that? Lloyd thought. He moved his arm and the fly took flight again. How do they always know when I'm going to swat at them? Lloyd's eyes narrowed. He was completely absorbed in the fly's aviation skills. I got it. They take off backwards. They watch me and fly backwards into the air, he thought. Like a mountain lion stalking its prey, Lloyd waited for precisely the right moment. This time he approached it from the rear. I got him! I got him! I got the little bugger, Lloyd grinned with satisfaction. In Lloyd's hand, the fly tickled as it struggled to get free. Lloyd stopped still and thought for a moment. Something stirred inside him when he realized how desperate the fly was. He slowly unfolded his hand and allowed the fly to resume its flight. There you go, Freddie. You earned your freedom. Now go pester someone else. As days passed into nights and back into days, signaled by the light coming and going in the small window of his cell, he quietly accepted the voice within his own mind as his only companion. Sometimes he sang softly to himself, pretending he was home on the farm, and the family was gathered around for a sing-along in the evening after dinner. Free from censorship, he opinionated about the war, his surroundings, and finally told himself stories from his youth. He talked to Olivine, told her how much he missed her, and wished he could lay his head on her shoulder because he was so very tired. When the guards finally came to lead him back to his hut, he followed, head down, wordless, and disconnected from his fellow prisoners.
Beautiful, Karen. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was very powerful. That moment when that man brought the shoes to the soldier. That was, oh,
That's a true story.
I believe it.
Yeah, my parents actually, when they went back for the 50th anniversary of the Dieppe raid, they contacted the French government and found that couple, but
Oh,
they were still
wow.
living there. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Wow. Incredible. Beautiful. Well, we're going to open it up here for questions. If anybody in the audience there has anything they'd like to ask Karen about her novel or about her writing process or about anything at all, please just
Is that okay?
wave at me from Zoom land or holler it out here and I'll relay it for everybody to hear. So I'll begin actually, Karen, because I know you wrote this based on your father's experience. So how difficult was it to you dramatized it, you fictionalized it in a sense, right? You created the scenes and everything. Did you lean heavily on him, asking him what happened now, or did you let your imagination have free rein here and there? How'd it go?
Parts of it, yeah, I did have to let my imagination go, I think, for a lot of it. And a lot of it, of course, my dad has been gone for quite some time, and I relied quite heavily on my mother. It was an emotional journey, a very emotional journey, especially when I started researching it and finding that, yes, this was true. A lot of the stories that I heard growing up they were just an adventure. You know, I was a child. I didn't understand the true impact of it until I started writing this, and it became very clear what these people had gone through. So yeah, it was quite an emotional journey.
I imagine. Totally. And I'm sure your father is very proud of you having done this book and brought his story to the world. So how long? It was 2.5 years he was in jail altogether?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
he was away
No
from
work.
home from December 1940 until July 1945. So
Wow.
5 years
Wow.
or almost 5 years. Yeah.
And was the woman at home your mother?
My mother, yes, and I've written parts of it about her. You know, that where she worked, you know, and they worked in a factory creating uniforms and what have you. And of course, her brother also went off at 19 and was involved in the when they landed in France, the invasion
D-Day?
in France. Yeah, D-Day. Yeah.
Wow.
He was 19,
19. Wow.
blown out of the tank, and luckily survived.
Wow. Amazing.
So,
Amazing.
yeah.
Well,
Oh,
go ahead. Libby's got a question here.
oh. Oh.
So I'll just let people out in Zoom land know. She was asking whether any of the fellow comrades in his platoon or whatever survived.
As far as I know, they did. But when I started writing the book, I created Dan, who was his partner in crime, I guess. They enlisted together and worked together and that kind of thing. And I did that for the sake of writing the story, because then he had, you know, they could exchange conversations and make the story go along. And yes, he did. Yeah. So.
And another question over here, Robert.
He was, the first camp was near Lambsdorff in Poland, Camp 8B, and they were in 1944, they were sent to Stargard, Camp 2D. And in January 1945, they were sent on a death march. That was the hardest thing for me to write, that was just terrible. They were marched from Stargard to Seton, which is in northern Poland, and west to New Brandenburg in Germany. And they were, I guess, trying to outrun the Russian army, which was advancing from the east. So.
Wow. Kathleen, I think you had a question. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I thought it was so amazing, that long bit about the flies. And when you were reading that, David said to me, you know, he said, that's right, they fly backwards, that's what they do. So I thought, I didn't know that. How did you know that?
I have a story to tell about that. When I was a child, my father used to entertain me by snatching flies out of the air. And I'd ask him, where did you learn how to do that? And he said, in the prison camp, I guess the boredom, and there were a lot of flies that weren't, So I just had to write about the flies.
Well, that's brilliantly done, the way you developed it and put it in like that. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I learned that in bush camps in northern Ontario, but yeah, same thing. You catch them from behind. Yeah. Anyway, beautiful. One more question here.
Yeah, because my parents are Dutch, right? And they have all their flies in their house had names, and I saw the things with them.
Yeah, Freddie the fly. Anyway.
So this woman was just sharing her experience in Holland and how they named the flies in their house.
Yeah. Sometimes I find I just have to have a little bit of fun with it.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Balance it out. One more question over here.
Oh, yes, I have.
Yeah, let me just repeat the question there, Karen. So she's just asking whether Karen's father, when he went back for the anniversary, whether he talked about that experience.
Oh, yes, he did. My mother, of course, was the talker in the family. Dad was already suffering from bone cancer. And it was shortly after that he started to crumble. But it was very emotional for him. He broke down and pretty much cried at the when they went into the cemetery. Yeah, my brother went. My brother was with them, and yeah, it was quite an experience for them.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much, Karen, for that. That was wonderful. Appreciate that. Not just for the reading, but the discussion afterwards. It's always good too. It's inspiring. Okay, yeah, let's a wound the world carries still, I think. I don't think we've healed that one yet. All right, we're going to come back into well, no, we're going to stay here live at Char's Landing, actually, and we've shifted things a little bit. Dean Lamont is going to read because he's got to leave early tonight. And then we're going to have Peter Paul Van Camp a little bit later on. So Peter Paul is reader 12. He's shifted around there. Sorry about that, Peter. But, Dean is going to share another Ned story, I'm guessing, but I could be. Yeah, he's nodding. It's another Ned story. Okay. We're waiting for the collection, Dean. It's got to come out soon. Take it away.
Thanks very much. This one is called Throw Another Log On. Going stir crazy in his house, Ned decided to air out his personality in the backyard. With a good umbrella, it hardly felt like it was raining out. Ah, yes, the trusty kale beds. Having survived 2 snowfalls and -12, were now straightening up and thinking about growing. God's gift to the lazy gardener. They were. The leaves would freeze solid. You could snap them like an icicle. And then when they thawed out, they would rise again like persecuted Palestinians. And there by the fence, the horse manure pile was steaming faintly. Oh my God. Oh my God. Sometimes just thinking about those thermophilic bacteria and composting earthworms would give Ned an environmental erection. Many of nature's marvels had been corralled in Ned's tiny estate. But what was it at all worth, he wondered, in the face of galloping global warming, catastrophic climate change? Was all of Ned's assiduous work here mere a fart in a windstorm, mere tokenism? Ned walked by the rain barrels, the vermicomposting, solar-assisted outhouse, into his greenhouse. Ned told the wimpy-looking trees that had survived his slam bam, thank you ma'am, horticultural efforts. Ditto for you guys. Better start growing or else. Next on his itinerary were the blackberry patches. After years of combat, they'd struck a truce, and now the blackberries formed a permaculture fence, saving Ned the trouble and expense of building a wooden fence. As long as they didn't grow into the aisles, fine, they wouldn't get their heads cut off. Working with nature, that was the answer, not working against it. Then the lazy gardener could sit in the shade, drinking beer or smoking a fatty, read, meditate, watch the birds, smell the flowers. Ned walked into his biggest garden, a garrison of 4x4 cedar posts strung with stucco wire to keep the deer at bay. An open beer 20x20 home for fruit trees, fennel, etc., plus 6 raised beds where he and his 2 sisters worked like peasants hunched over, feeding themselves and others. Ned sat down in an easy chair to survey his domain. Yes, he told himself, we're filling our tummies, but what else? In the old days, Ned and other green dinks and dolls would hold worm bin workshops, start trees in schools, do the odd hands-on exhibits at Science World and elsewhere, run enviro groups, and sure, there was plenty to do locally. the LUMA'S lands redevelopment, the Bird Street beaver ponds, for example. But Ned was getting older. Why, he'd even shirked on getting a smartphone. I don't want people texting me day and night. Also, having become a member of the International Seniors Organization, Fog Duckers International, he was easing up on working. I've done my share, goddammit, and moving into more recreation, meditation, parentheses, what the fuck is going on anyway, and similar pursuits. Perhaps the best thing, Ned mused, was to put the old warhouse out to pasture where he could reminisce about the good old days. Yes, Ned told the listening trees, screw you guys and the worms too. Forget the rainwater harvesting and all that old crud. I'm off to Thailand, find myself a hot young babe, bring her back to Canada, marry her so she can steal half my house. No, Ned thought, getting up and brushing the twigs off. A more viable plan would be to start that senior men's group he'd dreamt of, OPDH. No, O doesn't stand for obsessive. P, not post anything. D, not dysfunctional. H, not handicapped. No, OPDH stands for old pricks die hard. Yes, Nick thought. He could see gray power rising up like forests of erect penises, demanding social justice and environmental action, throbbing with one heart. Walking back to the house, he thought, nah, it's probably just another Ned fantasy. Maybe I'll just fire up the wood stove in the cabin, drill out a few more Mason B condos, see if I can scare up somebody to go to the LUMA'S lands meeting with. We might as well get our 2 cents worth, eh? And the local guys are probably all watching hockey games or working on their old vintage cars or their hot rods, maybe chasing pussy on the internet. No, I'll put on my demented woodpecker outfit, go out into the cabin, and later we'll get our 2 cents worth. And that's exactly what Ned did. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Ned seems to be getting feistier as he gets older. I don't know. It's a new side of Ned. It's the 18 plus side of Ned. I should come with a trigger warning. Anyway, thanks, Dean. Always entertaining. So where are we now? We're jumping past Peter and we're going to Robert Gunn is going to read here live in person. Come on up to the mic, Robert. Thank you. There he is.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Riverbend. A new year, a new project. Should my ADD allow. My personal history of the imaginary town of Riverbend will be presented in many parts and styles for your edification and enjoyment over the following months, with nothing too highbrow. The abyss of time, Rangalia. Sometimes a story should start at the beginning, even if the beginning is 400 million years ago. Far, far to the south, in the ancient ocean we call the Pacific, a giant volcanic vent for centuries spews out hot lava and ash. From this fiery cauldron, only 100 million years later, a plateau rises from the sea and is born to the sun. If science had been around, it might have called this small continent Rangalia, as science did millions of years later. And now for the truly fantastic. The ocean plain upon which our small continent sat begins to move north and east, as though on a slow, inexorable conveyor belt, one that moves only a few centimeters each year, accumulating as it travels over new fissures, deposits of granite and limestone, Many centuries and 10,000 kilometers later, Rangalia collides with the Laurentia, or the northwest coast of the American continent, and grounds on this sandstone shore stops. This is how, in a much simplified, for the sake of the yarn, what we now call Vancouver Island and Haida Gwaii came to rest where they do. Immense time and immense distances cannot easily be comprehended, but it is all time, time, time. How do we know all this? The fiery ejections from Earth's molten core being much the same all over. It is the fossil record. This shows that this island started life in the South Pacific Ocean, south of the equator. The fossils of ammonite sea creatures, whose species occur only on the islands and continents in the south, also show up in the fossil record of the old Vancouver Island rocks. Who can know what our traveling rock might have looked like when it collided with the continent after so many millennia at sea? Abundant coastal marine life, to be sure, and birds, of course, but what else could have made it home during this long journey north? How had ocean storms, the wind and rain scoured the rocks? Had beaches formed? Did bird colonies produce guano and hence thin soils? What seeds may have been dropped and found a tenuous purchase? What part did different sea levels play? When did it become our green, verdant home? Obviously, once moored firmly on the sandstone of what we now call the Sunshine Coast, it must have been easy for whatever mainland flora and fauna was present at the time to colonize this new arrival. Over the following millennia, our rocks suffered joys and sorrows of multiple ice ages, sea level changes, and whatever climate chaos ensued. What we can say with certainty of our own eyes is that locally, as the ice finally retreated, leaving behind two iconic lakes, their overflowing waters found the path of least resistance, just as water has always done. As this river wore down through the softest moraines and rock to forge its path to the sea, it formed River Bend. 2. The first human inhabitants. There is some agreement that human habitation on the Americas took place remarkably quickly, given the great distance from north to south. Recent suggestions are that 37,000 years ago, humans were as far south as New Mexico. This is based on the use of tools to butcher mammoth bones found in some cave or other. Did these migrations use both the coast and the more open interior? Who knows? Thus, the history of human habitation on our rock is unknown, contentious, and debatable. For the sake of our story, we can acknowledge that at the outset that the Hupachasis and Sishat are the original inhabitants of River Bend, as far as the written, admittedly settler, records are concerned. When did the first settlement take place in Barkley Sound? The Sishat say that Benson Island is their home. We also know that many of the archaeological artifacts found at Shoemaker Bay were from the east coast of the island, Salish in fact. We also know that the wonderful figures on the Sprout Lake petroglyphs show that the artists were long familiar with the mysteries of the creatures of the deep, dark lakes. If we can get a little ahead of ourselves here, the Alberni Pioneer News of 1925 explains the warning that these are warnings given by these figures were carved by CURATED, a mythical Hupachasit slayer of monsters, to remind his people to be careful when on deep lakes and to make no noise with their paddles, so as to avoid waking these dangerous evil beings.
Running over 5 there.
So these New Chandler-speaking residents in villages and the shores of the river at Riverbend and further up were when the first white settlers arrived. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Robert. Never fails when I give a warning. It's just before they finish, right? Anyway, thank you for that, Robert. Nothing like geology to put our little lives in perspective, right? And, you know, a little fleeting flicker of time that we are here on this beautiful part of the world. All right, we're going to go out to Zoomland now, and Atma Frans is here getting her long overdue full 10-minute Luma spotlight after I got her off last time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for understanding and not giving up on us here at Electric Mermaid, because we really do love your work, and we're
Great.
glad you came back to share some more of it. What are you going to share this evening?
Yeah, I have some poems and also part of a short story, but I'm also going to read something I hadn't planned to, inspired by the previous reader. I had written a poem about Nixie, which is also a water creature that lives in the deep, and that's a shapeshifter and goes back millennia of years. So this poem is called Nixie. With water fingers I touch the shores, rub calcite cliffs, stroking the skeletons of my early children. I whisper their names: crinoid, brachiopoid, foraminifera, how young I was. I remember the time before light. A breath rippled my skin, and I birthed a million things. Some slithered away from me, some grew wings, some still feed on my teeth. Some returned, and I caressed their fat, white bellies. They say I ensnare people, drunkards or sailors who float above me, hands on a cold railing, looking down on me. But my song is their own longing, their memory of a time when we were one. And this fits nicely with I've been working on a collection of short stories that are interlinked and that are all set in Europe. And the story I'm going to read the opening from is set in South Holland, where this creature also has a mythological presence. The story is called The Silt Between the Reeds, and it's set in the summer of 1999. A soft tinkling wakes Karl. A low morning sun is splintering into his eyes. The light dims somewhat as a billowing curtain falls back into place. A flimsy, lacy thing, so unlike his dad. Maybe it came with the house, like the creamy wallpaper with the pink tulips. Last night, when Karl had stumbled up the stairs after several beers with his dad, he hadn't noticed anything. Groaning, he turns around. The space beside him is empty. Why did Isabel get up so early on a Saturday? He pulls the sheets up to his chin, but the clinking, jingling melody keeps him awake. In the kitchen, Isabel is on her laptop. You're working? Just reading some documents. She doesn't look up. There's coffee. Karl drinks it in the living room, next to the radio on low, watching the polders outside, the cornfields and lush meadows. Yesterday, when they arrived in South Holland, dusk had smudged out the landscape. In the distance, a row of poplars knits the flat land to the sky, which is expansive and luminous here. So unlike Antwerp, where the air is trapped between buildings and often hazy with exhaust and dust. After the morning news, he snaps the radio off. Mario Puzo has died, and Americans are throwing millions on a committee to fix the Y2K bug and keep the world from coming apart as it seems in a few months. Karl has a recurring nightmare of being stuck in the middle of a crossroad, honking cars blocking him on every side, the traffic lights dead. Not that he'll go anywhere on January 1st. He'll be home in Antwerp with all the shutters down, playing board games with Isabel and Milou. He slips into his sneakers and is out the door. His dad's house is the last before the brick quay turns into a grass dyke. Karl runs fast, feet pounding on the dirt trail, the morning chill on his skin. Just before the river merges into the arm of the sea, the path narrows. Set a ways back from the embankment is his opa's old farm, with a second story now, and the barn gone. In the adjacent meadows, black and white cattle are grazing. Heads down, they step slowly forward, all of them together like one organism. Karl walks the last bit of the path, which is bordered with buttercups and tall grasses. The sheep that graze the dikes must still not come here. At the crooked gate he stops. Beyond it, the small thatched house surrounded by poplars, the breeze rustling their leaves, moving through them in a swirling motion. Does Ada still live there? That whole summer before Opa died, Karl had played with her. Old enough to roam around by himself, yet young enough to not feel awkward around girls. They made sand sculptures, caught frogs and silvery fish, or flew his kite. They stayed away from the mouth of the river, where, according to Ada, the Nixie hid in the silt between the reeds, grabbing people who walked by too close. That's why my mother put the gate up, Ada had said. He smiles at his own gullibility back then. Her mother probably had been concerned about passers-by slipping on the narrow path between the house and the water, or wandering too close to her home. He trots down the embankment. From here, the trail used to skirt wetlands where large egrets congregated, their wings like white umbrellas popping open, filling the air with their flapping and a high-pitched shrieking. But the land is dry now and farmed. The air smells of fresh manure instead of salt. It must be the dam that had been built that summer. According to his Opa, it would stop the tides from flooding the lower lands. The sealed sea arm would turn sweet so farmers could use its water for irrigation. Ada's mother had worried that the dam would kill the life of the sea arm in the river. If the sturgeon can't enter, where are they going to spawn? But Opa claimed the sturgeon were gone anyway, hunted to extinction when he was a small boy, killed for the value of their eggs. He had said the dam was progress. But Karl misses the egrets. He takes a different way home, a straight road cutting between fenced meadows. He sprints on the last bit, working up runner's high, the adrenaline of pushing his body. Still, the days feel spoiled, as if something dark has warmed itself into all the expansive brightness. And if I still have a minute, I can also end with a poem. I'm sorry, I forgot to look at the timing. Do I still have time?
You betcha. You're under 7 minutes already.
Good. Then I'll read 2 more poems. The first one was published in Understory magazine, and it's a very wintry poem. It's called Behind Me, My Footprints Fill with Powder. A mouse gray sky dusts the hills, softens the silhouettes of evergreens. I walk alongside my adult daughter, our words tiny clouds between us. In the bay, the island is disappearing, a ghost in the mist of whirling white. When she was a child, I could gather her up, say, the dark is just an empty room. Fresh snow covers the blue woods, paints each branch, each needle. I catch a flake on my tongue, taste the sharp crystalline beauty. Behind me, my footprints fill with powder. In this cold, you can't feel yourself. And then the last poem was published in the Beachcombers anthology, and I wrote it a couple of years ago at a time when my partner and I had lost a lot of people, and the poem is called Still There. Still there. We crouch on a weathered log. Ocean rushes gray into the shore, lifts and shakes the pebbles. We lean into each other, mirror image from these early days, the world narrowed by love. Now life closes in, even air has substance. Who else might we lose? We do not speak of it. The sea breeze creeps into all the tiny spaces between us. Thank you.
Beautiful. Now you have such a gift for moving the silence in between your lines and your language that it just allows them to sink in and seep into us. So it's almost like it takes it to another level. It's not just our ears hearing the poem, it sinks into us and we feel the language as it comes out. It's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
That was great. All right. Yeah, thank you again. Okay, we're going to come back to Char's Landing live here, and Shawna's going to do some of her spoken word for us, I believe. We're hoping. There's Shawna. Made the soggy drive in from the lake to be with us tonight.
Yeah. Oh, no.
There we go.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. This one is called Will You Come Back? I wrote it close to 8 years ago. I'm emotional, temperamental, like the moon in the night. One night I am dark. The other night I am bright. Pointed in all directions, to the left, to the right. Ricocheting between my shadow and light. Not different than yours, the same at our core. So listen, please listen. I cannot be contained. I cannot be confined. It makes me feel panicky, like I'm losing my mind. I'm different. Oh, I'm different. And I'm glad that I am. But I'm not glad that my different is why your spectacular heart ran. For as it ran away, you brought in your hand all of my heart. It regrets from the start. For the start is when the unraveling began. First in my mind, back to the time I pushed you in a corner with my pressuring mind. Looking back on it all, it is all so absurd. What I must have sounded like, what you must have heard. My heart, you have it, and I want it back. I want my heart back, and I want you back too. So will you come back and just love me too? For I cannot be restrained, nor walk with a cane, limping through life being the same. I'm the moon, remember? A quarter one night, then round and full. There is nothing I won't do. I will continue to grow. So will you come with me? Or stare at my back as I crawl towards my fate, as I abandon the lack? Because I'm the moon and the world needs me. And the only way I can be the moon is if I can show all of me. This is the only way I am free to be. Free in my fear, free in my pain, free in my heart, in my love, in my name. So will you come back and just love me? For you will see I came back to me. I emerged from my head where the fear was created, the words that I said, and wait till you see what I will be when the world sees me. Then maybe you will see while I was pouring out me. The moon and the stars, I see that you are one with the night too, your very own star. Free to shoot away, to be who you are. But please shoot back to the moon behind you. Remember the spark and all that was true. The light in me, for I was hidden that night, the night you turned around and walked away. I know I pushed you away, only wanted you to stay. So will you come back and just love me?
Thank you, thank you. That was lovely, Shawna, as always. It's there's such an honesty to your work and a clarity and a deceptive simplicity, because there's lots going on in there, but the storyline's clear on the surface at the same time. So beautiful work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, we're going to go back out to Zoomland for some musical entertainment now. We've got Mark Wonneck there tuning up in Qualicum Beach. How are you this evening, Mark?
Well, I'm pretty good. How are you?
Good, good. And
You can hear me all right?
Yeah, guitar sounding all right.
I get closer? Yeah.
That's nice, yeah.
I've been switching back and forth, just wondering about how long my songs are. I always think they're too long, so we'll try this one. I know this one will fit. I made a mistake on the grocery list. You never know where that might lead. I saved a coupon for an IQ test in case I was smarter than I appeared to be. I climbed a tree just to see if it was worth it at the top. A pretty nice view, but kind of lonesome too. I climbed down and never climbed back up. The clouds are spinning rainbows. The wind says so long. The light is ripe for serving the edge of here and gone. I got an idea from a happy day, and it carried me through summer and fall. But I set it down to find a better way, and now I can't find it anywhere at all. I spent a lot of life just looking for a path that I hadn't made yet. Looking's part of living, and I'm all for forgiving, 'cause I made it up step by step. The whales are swimming circles, the birds are singing songs. The light is ripe for serving the edge of here and gone. I got along singing these little songs, some by others, some by me. It always seemed to help just to let it out, but nicer with a bit of harmony. I left my best rhymes in the backyard somewhere among the weeds. If you want them, you can have them. If you dig them, I'm a give and take as much as you need. It's playing that brings you laughter, hoping moves you on. The light is right for serving the edge of here and gone. Well, there's been a lot of turns by the time you get down near the end of the road. Some good, some bad, some not so easy to unload. Would I do it again just the same? I doubt that I would. It's a one-way track and no going back, no matter how much I wish I could. Made a mistake on the grocery list, you never know where that might lead. Eggplant, pomegranate, rutabagas, all organic sure tastes good to me. The clouds are spinning rainbows, the wind says so long. The light is right for serving the the edge of here and gone. It's playing that brings you laughter, hoping moves you on. But life is right for serving the edge of here and gone. I never know how that whistling part's gonna go. There we go. Thank you.
Yeah, you're braver than I am. I'll tell you. I
Yeah,
wouldn't
that
dare
was
whistle
tricky. That's
alive.
tricky. Yep.
You did really well with that. That was great, man. And did that all get inspired just from, getting the wrong item on a grocery list, or was it?
I think I just said that to myself.
Uh-huh.
What if I made a mistake on this grocery list when I was at the store or something? And then I thought, oh, okay, well, it could happen. And then what happens?
I want to steal your line, "The Edge of Here and Gone." I think that'd be a great title for a poem too. So maybe you should title this poem that. I don't know, but
yeah, go for it.
Super.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Mark. That was wonderful. Nice to have a musical interlude. That it's uplifting. Thank you.
There we go.
Thunderous applause here at Char's for you. I'll be the intermediary. All right, we're going to come back in-house now, and Vicki Drybrough is going to read. Where's Vicki? There she is. And there comes Vicki, my old partner in crime.
Oh, thank you. Oops, upside down. Okay, that's pretty good. I think people can hear me. Yeah. Second estate. Yeah.
Thank you to Kyle for doing all that mic work. Yes. Hey. Woo. And just a reminder before Vicki starts here that Mark's music is available at markwonneckmusic.com. If anybody wants to look him up and purchase any of his music, I'm sure he'd appreciate it. Good evening, Vicki. How are you tonight?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you.
Cool.
A little bit tired from all this weather, but anyway, I had no idea what I was going to read tonight. And I realized I had a character that has been running through all my stories, but I don't pay much attention to him. So I had written a larger piece about him and way too long to read tonight. So I just grabbed 2 fragments and stuck them together. And it's called Herbie Jones. Herbie Jones was thin with a narrow face and pointy chin. He had a sharp nose and small dark eyes that always looked half closed. His brown hair stuck out from his cap in tufts, as if he lopped it off himself with his kitchen scissors. He looks untrustworthy, said my mother once, but Haddon seemed to like him. I don't like him, said Sam. He kicks his dog. What a nasty man, I thought, and wondered if we could steal his dog and hide it in our woodshed. If I ever saw him hurt his dog, I would kick him in the shins hard. What Herbie Jones wanted more than anything else was to be the postmaster. Ernie, who was doing it now, was old and looked as if any day now would be his last. With help from his daughter and granddaughter, he managed to get the mail delivered every day. But you could tell it was touch and go. At least that's what Sam said. Legally, Jeannie wasn't supposed to touch the mail because she wasn't old enough. But I thought Jeannie was smart and brave to drive that old truck around the island all by herself on days when Ernie was ill. But Herbie Jones had a different idea. Ernie told my mother that Jones was always writing letters to head office, complaining about Ernie and how he let a miner drive the delivery truck and handle the mail. We felt bad for Ernie and his family because they worked so hard to make sure everyone got their mail on time, and Jones was being a real asshole. He complained every time he was on the ferry about how the mail was always late and boasted about what a great postmaster he would be if only they'd let him. Most people ignored him. Some even told him they were sick of his complaining. Jones already had a job, delivering fuel and groceries and running his water taxi service. Not that many people used it. He charged an arm and a leg, according to my father, and wasn't very dependable. My mother sometimes told the story of when she first moved to the island with Sam, who was only 4 years old at the time. Dad was away all week working in Vancouver. On this particular day, she had gone to town without Sam, who was spending the day with the Haddens, collecting the eggs and helping to sweep out the chicken house. When they were done, he and Mr. Haddon would go fishing. Mom was hoping she would come home to a nice salmon on the table. It was a quiet day on North Road. None of the ferry traffic had come this way, so she kept walking with 2 heavy shopping bags, hoping that someone would come along and give her a lift. About a third of the way home, she heard a loud vehicle approaching from behind, so she stepped to the side and stopped. Herbie Jones's rusty Ford pickup slid to a stop, and the passenger door swung open. "You need a ride, Mrs. Stone?" My mother had met Herbie Jones at the Haddens when she first arrived and had spoken to him a few times on the ferry. People who didn't like him had given him the nickname Weasel, but he had always been pleasant to her. "He comes across as lecherous sometimes," Mrs. Haddon had said. My mother was wary about getting into the truck way out here, far from any houses, but she was tired and her arms hurt from carrying the heavy bags. If he got out of hand, there was always the new hammer in the Marshall Wells bag. "How far are you going?" she called over the sound of the engine. "Post office." She nodded and lifted her bags up onto the floor of the truck before climbing in and shutting the door. The truck accelerated slowly and they were soon bumping over the potholes she would have had to dodge if she were walking. "It's a long walk from the ferry to your house," he said. "Oh, it's not bad if you don't have to carry anything." She liked sitting up high. You could see more. "It must be hard living here alone." "Oh, no, there's lots to do and I have Sam for company." Here we go, she thought. "The nights, they must get kind of lonely, eh? Aren't you afraid all by yourself?" There was a sly glint in his eyes. My mother stared at the road ahead. "Not at all. I have a shotgun, which I know how to use, and a cast iron pan." She turned to look at him. "And then there's the goose." His eyebrows shot up. "You have a goose? They can be vicious." "They certainly can." He glanced over at her. "Sounds like you're prepared for just about anything." "I believe I am." He seemed to relax after that, and they chatted comfortably about people on the island, including Mrs. Haddon and her wonderful cooking. "That's how I came to live here," said Herbie Jones. "I stayed in one of their cabins for a week when I was on holiday. I liked it so much I moved over here." The truck slowed and squealed to a halt in front of the gate. "Here we are." "Thank you, Mr. Jones. It was nice chatting with you," said my mother as she climbed out and collected her bags. "My pleasure, Mrs. Stone." He touched his cap as he drove away.
Thank you, Vicki. Thank you. I love your characters. They're so real. Totally so real. Thank you. Thank you. All right, we're going to go back out into Zoomland now, and David Kipling over in Gibsons is going to share another one of his short stories, I'm hoping. My fingers are crossed.
Where am I? Oh, here.
There you are.
I sit up on a chair, wherever. Where am I? Oh, crikey.
Yeah, you better go back on the sofa. Here.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, no problem. We hear you well there, David.
Okay.
Now we see you too. That's beautiful. We're looking at your belt buckle for a while there, but we're good now.
Well, that's right. It's the most attractive part. So I timed this at 6 minutes, and I'd like to thank Mark Wonneck for introducing the shopping list. I've been going to the farmers market when the weather's good. They have benches and umbrellas, a few tables where the coffee van sets up. Today, I asked this older chap if I could sit at his table, and he said, "Good Lord, yes, take the weight off. That's a nice bunch of potatoes you've got there." Katie has said to pick up a bag here and pick out your own from the boxes. The last customer was a filling at 4 o'clock, and there was some cooked chops in the fridge. I see him at the market now and then, poking around the fruit and veg. He doesn't buy much, just passing the time, I suppose, a retired chap. When I sat down, I saw he had a badge in his lapel, that old solid metal kind with thick enamel baked on it. A car of some sort, red and silver with a number on it. We got talking, it being a summery kind of day. The air was soft, and there was even a brass band or something down the street. You could just hear it over the chatter. Anyway, after he had a quick look at these potatoes I bought, he had a sharp eye. I nodded at his badge, because of course I like cars, and asked him if it was a club or something he belonged to. Ah, he grinned, that was years ago. We used to sell food at the stock car track. I perked up at this point. How it was, you see, my dad had two grocery shops, one in the market square in Barnston. The square's gone now, all built over. Do you know Barnston? Used to be cattle auctions there in the square every month, last Saturday of the month. I say cattle, but of course it was livestock generally, sheep, pigs, you know. Dad had a van as well, a mobile shop that we drove around the villages. Early starts, you know, in the grocery trade, almost as bad as bakers. Up and out when it's still dark, off to the wholesalers, stock up the shop and the van. That's why I enjoy a farmer's market nowadays, like a holiday, right? No work to do, just looking. What was that about car racing? I chipped in. All that. Sunday afternoons, we'd take the grocery van over to Byfield Stadium. Every other week the races were, and we'd open up the counter and hoot the horn. Dad knew the promoter from somewhere or other. They might have been in the army together, I don't know. This promoter was a character, a wheeler dealer. He'd book novelty acts, stunt riders, anything to draw the crowds, a fire breather, and a woman who swallowed swords one time. Imagine. Anyway, Dad and him agreed on a rent for us to pay to park and sell from the van. Meat pies, sausage rolls, food we could sell cold, and a tea urn, of course. Proper china mugs, mind you, no cardboard rubbish. You can't drink tea out of cardboard, now can you? And cheese rolls, we were famous for our cheese rolls. Mum and Dad made quite a thing of it. 3 different cheeses people could choose from, right there, properly sliced too. None of those plastic packets for us. We did our own slicing, had a slicing machine, not lives, spread germs, knives do. Sweet yellow onions, now and then you can get Vidalia onions from America, a treat they are. And a lovely chutney to spread on it. Pickle, we called it back then. Shops nowadays call it chutney, don't they? People loved our pickle. Mother makes her own recipe. We even sold it in jars. I'll tell you a little secret. We printed our own labels for our jars saying Barnston Pickle, so it looked like that proper brand back then. Branston. You remember Branston Pickle, surely all the shops had it. So we used our town's name where our shop was, Barnston. So Barnston Pickle. I don't think we were breaking any laws, were we? I chipped in. Did the stock car racers buy from you too? Oh, yes. And we sold apples, bananas, simple stuff, chocolate bars, not hot dogs. Bloody nuisance those are, excuse my French. You need a special heater and they're all a mess. You don't want oranges either, not for eating out of your hand, do you? Oranges and pears, they're too wet, you see, when you eat them. That's the trick to selling at public events. You have to give them stuff they can eat out of their hands walking around. That was all years ago. The races were packed back then, you know, weekends, greyhounds, the horses, stock cars, families and kids out in the car for a Sunday afternoon. Same as the seaside back in those days. There'd be people lining up all afternoon. We did a good trade. Not nowadays, it wouldn't be. You got broke today. There's not the crowds anymore. It's not the same. People don't go any more Sundays. Too much television, my view. Yes, must have been 8 or 9 years we were there selling food at the Sunday races. Then my dad died, so I took on the business. I kept it going, but only the shop in Barnston, mind you. Couldn't cope with the van as well, not after Wendy died, my wife. Had children grow up and weren't interested in the trade, so I just closed up. Good times, though. Anyway, that's where the car badge comes from. Nice one, isn't it? Was the badge from a racing team? Did you sponsor anyone? I tried to get more. No, must have been one of them gave it to me. I don't remember. But it's a nice badge, real enamel. Now, those are Saxons you've got in your bag, aren't they? Saxons? Lovely potato. Are you going to mash them? Saxons are beauties for mashing. As good as Maribel's even. Better than. Little dab of garlic butter, just a bit. Lovely. Bit of cream cheese. Now, you do heat your milk, don't you? Scald it before you stir it in. A lot of people use cold. Ruins it, my opinion. Full cream milk, I don't have to tell you that, do I? Salt and pepper. Oh, I'm hungry already. There, now you've let me wander off all directions. Hear the band now? That's the Minstrel Boy they're playing. I know that one. There's a church hymn with the same tune. I've heard it from the chapel, the Methodists, down next to where they're building. Wasn't it in a film as well, that film about India with Michael Caine and what's his name, James Bond? At our feet, sparrows fought in the gutter while we chatted, and after a while we looked politely at our watches and said our goodbyes. At home, that evening, we enjoyed some wonderful mashed potato, me and Katie, thanks to that old chap's advice. But he never did tell me about the stock cars. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And you with your characters and their voices, that's what does it, David. Beautiful.
Well, sometimes I think I have on my forehead, it says, talk to me, because I go anywhere and sit down and somebody will say, you know what, and I'm there for an hour. I'm too interested and too polite.
Yeah, it's a hazard to being a good listener. All right. Thank you, David. Okay, we're coming back into Char's Landing here now, and Joe Lunchbucket is up next, aka Rob Franco. There he is back there, our octogenarian, feisty reader, never a political bone in his body, but maybe tonight he'll surprise us. There we are.
How's that?
That's
Am I
looking,
breathing?
that's looking good. You're breathing from this angle, Bob. Looking good.
Okay.
Yeah. All righty.
Thanks. Countries relinquished right of might for judge and jury. Is this the apex of our civilization? If every Earth resident had a vote, would we choose UN arbitration and curb inflation? Unions use strikes in arbitration. Could unionizing armies push nations to negotiation? Could UN aid us in the event of any Nostradamus dire prophecy and be our global insurance policy for every calamity? Can countries set their own migration policy and select migrants like corporations choose an employee? Is Cold War aim of diminishing socialist Russia and China still U.S. priority? Would prolonged peace break their war industry and slow world economy? In the 60s, labor and welfare housed and fed us all. What caused our downfall? Why has the 21st century more homeless and beggars than post-WW2 Europe saw? Was closing mental homes and legalizing shoot-up centers our fatal flaw? Can we claim to be civilized because we incorporated humane warfare rules into law? Did Russia have as much right to remove NATO off their border as JFK did in removing Russian presence in Cuba? Will future generation blame U.S. dominant nation, or will church state media monopoly mind control tool rule, ensuring that only their truth is taught in school? Is all I've said the unhinged hysterical ravings of a senile old fool? Prove it wrong and I'll accept the ridicule. Consider, did we evolve and create God in our image? If the world had only one religion or none, would we see present Israeli-Palestinian conflict? Can we keep multiplying on a finite planet, or will we run out of breathing space? If Trump had one second term, would he and Putin have redrawn Russian borders, Russian Uk borders, and safeguarded all that bombed out real estate? Will campaigning for peace and stopping migration re-elect Trump head of U.S. state? Homo sapiens tops the food chain and is the only creature that uses fire, pollutes, and causes global warming. But could we ward off an asteroid strike? If nations can't agree on UN settling disputes peacefully, will the alternative be nuclear Armageddon WW3? Cheerful thought, can our biggest threat be ET arriving with their colonizing missionary, offering yet another position, life after death guarantee? Before our sun dies and dries up the sea, can we know-it-alls build an ark and preserve mammals and humanity? But if our dominance ends, can the planet survive for eternity?
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Bob. I love that idea of unionizing the soldiers. You know, they put it on a contract. We don't do war. We'll only do peacekeeping missions. Yeah, that would be great. Excellent. Okay. All right. We're going to go back out into Zoom land now. And Kathleen Vance is standing by there, shifted David off the couch and taken over the hot seat. Good evening, Kathleen.
The first on the list of irate recipients that Jack McSweeney provided was a Ruth Gallows on Paradise Place. I wish I'd never agreed with Harry that a woman-to-woman approach would be best, Heather thought to herself as she guided the taxi driver in circles, searching the endlessly interlocking, deliberately crooked, wooded lanes of the development of private homes that 2 years ago had been plunked down in the middle of what had been a public recreation area. Another dead end, Heather exclaimed as she heard the taxi driver grind the gears, shoving the cab into reverse. All these mansions with their identical driveways and lawns have been plunked down on cul-de-sacs like so many tombstones. How can anyone possibly find Paradise Place in this hell? Heather groused. Desperate, she decided as a last resort to hand the driver the directions Harry had scribbled out for her. Are you Ruth Gallows? I'm Heather Bloom, a private investigator who has been engaged by Mr. Jack McSweeney of McSweeney Florists to look into the death of his twin brother, Liam. I know it's been a year now, but did you phone the late Mr. Liam McSweeney to complain about an unwanted order of flowers? Yeah, I remember. McSweeney said it was this lawyer, Laura Bannister, who ordered them. But I was sure it wasn't her. You see, as I told McSweeney, it was her that got me this job as live-in caretaker here at Paradise Place. But I've had nothing to do with her since then. If anything, it should have been me sending flowers to her out of gratitude, like for getting me this gig. But I've never sent anybody flowers in my whole life. But the order sheet says the flowers were addressed to the lady of the house, not to a caretaker. So it couldn't have been the lawyer who sent them, because she knew I weren't no lady of the house. But you accepted the flowers when they came. Of course I did. Who could blame me? This huge house? Oh, I only get to live here. So the lights get turned on and the place is occupied. And for that, I get paid a pittance. Okay, it's a luxury mansion. But when I meet the owner and she offers me the job, she shows me to a tiny, tiny room off the kitchen and tells me I'm to sleep there. She says I should feel free to use the kitchen, but to stay out of the rest of the house, except to turn on lights and check that it's all there. So generous, eh? She acts like she's offering me the moon when she's really the queen bee giving me, the measly worker bee, a little corner of the hive. She's not expected back for a couple of years, even though she claimed to just love this place. You have to understand, these people collect houses the way some people collect shoes. I mean, who needs more shoes than they have feet, I ask you? So it didn't take me long to figure out here was my chance to put at least one instance of the unfair distribution of the world's resources, to put that right. And so I became the lady of the house and had no choice except to accept the flowers, but I needed to know who sent them. I've learned in this life to cover all my bases. You never know who might be out to get you. That's why I called McSweeney to find out who sent the flowers. I'm not here to judge you, but is it possible that the lawyer found out that you were posing as the lady of the house and so sent you the flowers as a subtle way of hinting at an attempt to expose you as an imposter? Subtle? I know lawyers have a reputation for being aggressive and dishonest. Subtle is a new one for me. Maybe you should tell me more about this lawyer so I can judge, Heather said, evading the charges aimed at all lawyers in general. I met Laura Bannister, that's her name, at the beach. All I had was my bathing suit and my beach towel. Not so many clues as to how rich a person is. I had swimming lessons at the Y, so I can swim as well as anybody who's learned to swim at any swanky country club. If Laura hadn't offered me a lift home, I needn't have mentioned that I didn't happen at the time to have one. A home, I mean. That's when Laura remembered this neighbor of hers and hooked me up with this caretaking job. And that's all there was to it? Okay, I admit Laura wanted a romance as well, but we were chalk and cheese. She's Stanford Law, and I'm high school equivalency, if you get my drift. I'm a grafter. Laura spent her whole life congratulating herself on being so friendly and patient while waiting for others to serve her, and only occasionally giving the help but dressing down, just to maintain standards, you understand. So you're absolutely sure Laura Bannister didn't send you the flowers? As I tried to tell you, Laura didn't have it in her. She wouldn't threaten me with exposure. We were a romance that never happened, and Laura is the type who knows how to cut her losses. I told Mr. McSweeney to take back his common laurel and purple larkspur, at least that's what the label on the bouquet said, because it was obviously a mistake. You can check with Laura yourself. She'll tell you she never sent them. As I told Mr. McSweeney then, and I'll tell you now, I don't have to put up with being treated like this anymore, now that I'm the lady of the house. With that, Ruth Gallows showed Heather out the door in a very unladylike manner. Hearing the door slam behind her, Heather was glad she had kept the cab waiting. That's it. That episode's over.
Thank you, Kathleen. Great character. Awesome. Yeah, lovely, lovely. Okay, and you went 6.5 minutes, and I was so enthralled with the story, I didn't even look at the clock.
Sorry. My apologies.
Maybe that's a secret. If you want to go over time, just make the story so good I'll forget, right? Okay, we've got another reader on Zoomland here. Peter Paul Van Camp is going to come from Nelson today. But you're left the island and you headed to snow country. What's got into you, Peter? Oh,
It was Christmas. It was going to be Christmas, and we wanted to visit with my wife's grandson, and we're still here, and we're enjoying his company very much. By the way, the last time we spoke, I was just about to become a grandfather myself, and I was writing bicycle poems. So here's the one I wrote on December the 4th, the day that River was born. It's called Peter Paul Van Camp on a Bicycle at 70, number 53. And it begins with an exclamatory outburst. Jeepers! If I thought I was riding carefully before today, that was nothing. For today I am a grandpappy. And we patriarchs must mind how we go, seeing as how there is all that love and all that lore in our satchel, and just enough time to see that it gets where it needs to be. You know, I could have gone on in that vein on that day, but we had to get a teddy bear in the mail and a toque, so I kept it short. Now, this next one is, now River was just a day old when that was written. This poem is not even a day old, and it's about bread. And brand new one, it's called This Is Not That Poem. For some weeks now, I've been eating a slice of brown bread with a dab of good butter on it every night before going to bed. I thought that if I did this regularly and made it my routine, I'd eventually get the lowdown on brown bread and butter and be able to write my best possible poem about them. Not only about how good they taste when it's good brown bread and the butter is soft, but not too soft. So it spreads in a way that there are lumps of it in places, and how those lumps taste extra good to me. The poem would imply all of that, certainly, but subtler things too, in evocative language, chock full of lyrical touches, you know. If you have ever eaten a slice of good brown bread with butter on it, well, you'll know what I mean. There's poetry there. Poetry and maybe some music of a timeless quality. But now, the bread without the butter? Why, where's the ambrosia? Where's the rhapsody? Butter on its own? Not melodic enough. No, I have the combination I want, but I'm not getting the poem. Another few days, a week, 2 weeks, 3, and it might come to me. That poem might almost write itself then. And I'm willing to wait, because I really look forward to my bedtime eating when I think of it during the day. Bread and butter tonight, I say. My, but that does hit the nail on the head. And yet, what if there isn't a poem on the way? Well, maybe there doesn't need to be. Anyhow, this wasn't it. So I'll leave you with this one. As a sign of a show business family, I believe I have the credentials to offer this capably. This is called An Actor Prepares. An actor remembers his lines. An actor rehearses his cues. An actor goes bathing in light and applause. What then does an actor do? Well, after an actor emotes with restraint or delivers his ham in delectable hocks, an actor, and I mean here the best sort of actor, a consummate actor, an actor's actor, an actor walks back to his lodgings where an actor methodically, feelingly, yes, and above all, convincingly, washes, then rinses, and hangs up his socks. Oh dear. Oh dear, I must see to that promptly. And with that, I'll say good night and see you next time. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. Well, you're always surprising. And I have to say that the second last poem there, I think that was probably the best poem you thought you'd never written. That was really, really quite good. Bread and butter. I love it. All right, even though I can't eat it. Okay, we're coming back to in-house now at Char's Landing, and Rochelle Mecca is going to share some of her poetry from us. I don't know if this is from her new book. I'm wondering, oh, one of her, yes, her new book is here. Bring it on.
Ta-da!
There it is.
Brand new book, Emptiness of the Way. I managed to finish all the editing, get it published just before 2024. That was the biggest goal.
You did it. Congratulations. Awesome.
Yeah, you know what? Now I'm looking at the back of the book. I should just read the description. I stumbled into the void and learned her name was Poetry. I've known her forever, really. Now she wanted to talk, so I listened. She asked me desperately to channel her words onto page, bring the sustenance of her soul into the physical plane. The challenge is that I'd never be prepared for when she would speak. Rather, I would never know, so it would be best to prepare. Always have a journal and a pen. Phone with built-in notepad, voice recorder if need be. Poetry arrives in bursts. Some distant dimension where it lives sends information when her timing is best. Poetry doesn't think like we do. She has her own agenda and is heard as a different voice by everyone. Her skill is finding people when the moment is right, when the medicine is needed. Yes, poetry is a healer. First poem in the book. That's very appropriate to this time period now. And my books are like from the beginning to the end of the year in chronological order. So this is from 2022. So this one's called Head in the Clouds. Smell the sun, breathe in the clouds, dance above the earth. When the foggy layer wouldn't pass, we suffered in the bleak gray below. Mission to soar above it, commence! Drive up the mountain, watch the clouds dissipate until the ocean of evaporated water flows. The truth I didn't see when they all must think that my head is in the clouds. And sometime in the summer, I visited home, which is Niagara Falls, and I got a burst of inspiration that I never really felt growing up there. Perhaps the movement appears so slow because the distance water must travel is so vast. At a glance, water pumps over the edges, blasting down into the basin. There's a deceptive simplicity to how the water glides towards the edge, seems peaceful in its approach before gracefully finding its way over. And tumultuous wakes slam down into ancient rocks, constantly being whacked by tons of force from millennia. While white mist sprays up forever, there isn't a time when it slows. Of course, man-made systems keep the action alive these days, nonetheless breathtaking. See tourists all around me and finally feel their glow, a magnificent image they've only seen in pictures, dreamed of traveling, but never really felt the power of this incredible mass of water. How many people pilgrimage to this Mecca, an opportunity to see and take pictures of themselves in this place. A rainbow of common existence that flashes before everyone's eyes is a treasure alone for those who have only seen thin streams over hidden caverns you must hike down to for the experience. Those have seemed more incredible to me for years, when this beauty of infinite catapulting water, waves, and rapids is simply the place I grew up calling home. That was pretty fun, just seeing some tourists finally, and just, I don't know, the feeling of absolutely in love with each other, these couples' eyes. You can see it in their eyes, and I'm like, all right, I guess that's what this is for.
Honeymoon capital of Canada.
I guess so. All right, this one's called Battling the Sunset. I will set myself into battle with the elements in order to find meaning. Sun winks goodbye behind the ridge of mountains. She turns her head and dramatically holds her form, draping her exotic golden dress over the brightened horizon, while it slowly wavers and dissipates, casting all sorts of light and shades of color, reflecting off of every available ripple of water below. The magic being that every set of eyes peering upon this will see an equally unique view. Every conscious perspective change from every angle at which the bodies exist. As I drift into meaning, which I've found is to preserve the memories of this colorful event before it disappears, I feel the fear of battle, the threat of forgetting her splendor before I have the chance to recite it on page. Purpose arises as she settles the flowing twirl of her transforming dress. Then I finally see the sunset as a rainbow setting upon Tahitian shores, endlessly the beauty that she casts as she casts the curtain away to reveal the stars of the night. I'll shiver in the descending cold just to capture as much detail as I can. The sensation of temperature slowly disappears like the amount of available light as I settle in to immerse with the elements. The medium is the message, light. The artist is the sun.
We're running over there.
Over.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then that is the end.
Yeah, thank you. And where can we get your book, Rochelle? Where is your book available? Is it Mobius or at? Perfect. MechaTpoet.com. Thank you. All right. And where are we going now? We're back to Port Alberni, and Lucas is here in person to share some work with us. Where did Lucas go? He's here. He's here. He's coming. Here comes Lucas. All right.
By the way, I came in a little bit late, so I
Mm.
didn't know so let me know who you pay after.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no worries. Just $200 at the door on your way out. It's fine. It's Char, just put it in her purse. Yeah.
Excellent. Do you need a tip? Thank you. That's just fine. Thank you. Okay, so geez, I feel like a preacher with like the podium. This is weird. I've never like done this before. So I made an oracle card deck recently, like tarot cards, oracle cards, and I'm an artist. I draw goddesses, and then I also write about them, ones that I invent over the past few years. So what I want to do is I want to shuffle the deck, and then if someone wants to tell me to stop, I'll just read the meaning of that particular one, which is in the book. Okay. All right. So I'm just gonna shuffle. You just tell me, somebody tell me when to stop. Done. Ooh, okay. So this is Excalia. Goddess of love and openness. Okay. She's one of the more provocative goddesses.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he'll see you later.
Nice. Let's see here. Where did she go? Alphabetical order. I did this. I made
Yeah,
this book.
the goddess of love can be hard to find sometimes.
Right?
She's-
Exactly.
she's tricky. Yeah.
Exactly. But alas, here we are. So, Excalia. It is one thing to have loved and lost. It is quite another to open further than ever before in its wake. The goddess of love has been created, destroyed, ravaged, and revered for eons. When others contract at the risk of vulnerability, she opens more fully, abolishing all boundaries and embracing the magnitude of that which she is the vessel. Excalia receives and offers her being entirely without reservation, for she knows this is her only path to genuine connection. When she beckons to you, be ready for a transformation of the highest order, a calling to true satisfaction and fulfillment, the likes of which you could have never known.
There you go.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Okay, I'll shuffle. And you just let me know if.
All right. Yeah, we're good for another one. I think we
All
can
right.
get one more in lots of time.
All right. So someone else tell me when to stop. Stop. Okay. I have stopped. Ooh. You have Algea. Transitions. She's kind of meaning, things of the sea, and she's coming off onto the shore from the water. So
Should I let her husband Bill know about this or
No.
transition?
Okay, here we go. Algea, goddess of transitions. Emerging from the depths and bringing to light the wisdom of hard-earned experience, she moves ashore and brings a clear focus unparalleled by those who dwell in distinct realms. She is the bridge between the imagined and the physical world, a master of inner knowledge and expressing herself in material form. Algea brings forth a rich, life-giving presence that permeates all who meet her. She demonstrates that the beach is not only a static event where the water meets dry land, but a meeting of realms where new life occurs. The result of all she has become. If you have encountered her today, know that the process you have been going through has not been in vain. Your journey will yield lasting results and a new state of being from which to live your life.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Thanks.
So life's a beach and then you transition. That's, I think, I got that right, but.
And hopefully you're loving it all the way.
Perfect. All right. I won't tell Bill. Don't worry about it. Thank you so much, man. That was great. Come back next month. Bring us some more, Lucas. Yeah. All right. We've got Paul Borsboom. I probably said your last name wrong, Paul, but come on up. He's going to share a poem with us tonight. Another first-time reader. We're so glad to have him here. Thank you, Paul. Yes. It took a little coaxing to get him out of the audience and in front of that podium, but he's here and he's ready to go.
So this is basically a meditation, and I've written a poem around it, and it's a meditation that I've put together over a period of time. May my eyes see the silver lining in every dark cloud. I looked at my unexpected heating bill. I was warm. My car broke down. It didn't happen in a terrible storm. I broke my favorite mug. Now I can find a new favorite mug. Someone close to me is frustrating me, but they are my favorite bug. May my ears hear clearly and correctly. I was called out. It felt unfair. I listen quietly because I care. I asked that it be explained once more. I listened and wasn't angry anymore. May my lips speak kind words. My first thought was to lash out, but I stopped. After hearing more, my heart dropped. So instead I spoke kindly and was warmed with a smile. Kind words help us go that extra mile. May my heart act with compassion and empathy. Not everyone's story is as it appears. Sometimes personal bias interferes. One thing I do know for sure is that a big hug endures. May my feet walk a meaningful path. Am I walking in the right direction? Should I turn at the next intersection? Do I climb that hill right in front of me? Then I ask myself, where do I want to be? May my thoughts put it together in a positive way. When I think about it, it's pretty clear that all we need is to face our fears. Every step we take to make things better makes us all better together.
Beautiful, positive words. Thank you, Paul. All right, I think we've run the gamut of speakers. I'm going to jump up and do my last little blurb from the... Oh, we've got someone else. Oh my God, Libby, I'm sorry. We have time. We always have time for Libby. Thank you. All right. You just get up there and transition your way through this poem.
I think I'm okay this way.
Yeah,
I think
perfect.
it's great. Okay, nice to see everybody. What brought me here, what brought me to this piece was a pound of butter. So I'm at the store and I'm looking at this pound of butter going, $8 for a pound of butter. So I'm ranting and I'm spitting and I'm hissing, and my partner, who really wants some homemade muffins, presents me with plant-based butter. Now I looked at this and I'm thinking, is this only margarine with a top knot? Okay. So I don't have a recipe. So I went to my new favorite friend that my partner won't go near, and it's ChatGPT. So I punched in all the ingredients and it spewed out a pretty acceptable recipe. And I baked it. And when Bill found out where I got the recipe, he wouldn't touch one of the muffins. Like somehow it was going to permeate, this AI germ was going to possess his soul, right? Anyway, I had a good laugh. So to amuse myself, I ran that recipe again through ChatGPT. Only this time, I asked it to present it in a Shakespearean form. Yeah, I laughed, but I had a little bit of a mania edge, afterwards. Okay. A sonnet to plant-based muffins, Act 1. The flourish of ingredients. The 2 cups of fair all-purpose flour, a noble base, a teaspoon of baking powder to alleviate the grace, half a teaspoon of soda, a potion to rise, and a pinch of salt to pleasure discerning eyes. Act 2. The dance of wet ingredients. Half a cup of planet-based butter, a choice divine, 1 cup of applesauce, a fruit from the orchard fine, a half a cup of yogurt, plant-based in essence, a cup of sugar for sweetness, our present recompense. Act 3. The union of forces. Cream, butter, and sugar in a bowl, a harmonious blend. Add applesauce, yogurt, vanilla, a tale to transcend. Combine with the flour, a union profound. Stir not too much, let gentleness abound. Act 4. The baking ballet. Spoon into cups, a theatrical display, into the oven, let them find their way. 18 to 20 minutes, the climax draws near, a toothpick's verdict, the crescendo we revere. Act 5, the denouement. From the oven, let them cool, the final decree, transfer to a rack for all to see. Enjoy, dear friends, this muffin divine, a plant-based sonnet in every sweet line. In the kitchen stage, let this play unfold, a plant-based masterpiece, a story told. May your muffins rise like actors on the stage in this culinary drama, fit for every age. And of course, I wonder, should I be, quoting? Should I be giving a copyright reference?
Citing them.
ChatGPT?
No.
So I was at the very end, I was a little confused whether, I felt horrified. And so I typed in again, I'm really confused as to my feelings. I don't know what to feel, if I should be happy or sad. Let me know in Shakespearean verse. And it spewed out the last line. Hark, mine own soul doth find itself entwined in the perplexities of emotion, as if a tempest does rage within the confines of my very being. Alas, I know not whether, infused with delight or revulsion, myself need be.
All right. Thank you, Libby. All right. I don't think you need to give them credit, Libby. It was your idea. That's all that matters. Okay, I'm just gonna end with a very short poem here. It's gone on a little longer than usual, so I was gonna read some prose, but I'll just do a poem from memory from way back when. It's called From the Garden of a Quiet House. My father was a king who haunted his own castle. My mother, a queen of kitchens, an unspoken quarrel. When he said yes to her, he meant no. And when she said no to him, she meant never. And the house was always quiet. Evenings in their rooms, they could both look out across the brooding water, and my father would turn to his book, and my mother would turn to her sink. The storm between the islands receding, the house always quiet. From this corner of the garden, scrawny saplings rake at the air, and fireweed bolts from the loam. Here, I eat my fill of silence and sweat to pry these storms from my belly. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who came tonight and made tonight what it was, which I think was a really great way to start a new year. It was fabulous. And thank you, everybody who came. Yes. Special thanks, of course, to Karen Poirier, our featured reader, for her sharing of that fantastic novel. And I'm going to go out and get a copy. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm hooked. I want to read more. And thank you also to Atma, our featured spotlight there from our LUMA'S Spotlight. Thank you to everybody for sharing your great words. And a big thank you, of course, to Char, our hostess with the mostest, who made this happen, kept things functioning. Thank you to Karl, our moderator over here, keeping us on track, and to Kyle, our mic man over here, for keeping the mic in the right place. Thank you to each and everyone who came to listen, and to everyone who read. And please come back. We're going to have another great night, I'm sure, in February.
Thank you to Derek, and thank you, Derek.
Yeah, my pleasure, Karl. Thank you so much. Sorry.
As of right now, we do not. We're looking. Derek's going to find somebody for next month.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be looking for the 10-minute spotlight because I don't have that either.
Yeah. I have a writer I'm going to tap on the shoulder, and if they're not available, I'm going to tap somebody else on the shoulder. We'll get somebody, I'm sure. And if anybody's got a new book coming out or whatever, and you want to do a feature later on, we've got lots of open slots, so just let Karl know and we figure things out. Okay. All right. In the meantime, keep on writing, take good care, and we'll see you all next month. That was great, man. Come back and do some more.
We're mute. Yes. Bye, Char.
That was so from the heart. It was beautiful and so positive. Thank you.
All right.
I can't wait for the book, Kathleen and David.
Oh.
I'm looking forward to that book. Come on. I'll start writing my book soon too.
Oh, that's good, Karl. That's what I'm looking forward to.
I'll try.
All right. Oh, bye. It was great.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Shawna.